And so it's really going to put pressure. And in the rep world, I think that we're not going away. What's going to happen is it's going to become automated. They're going to need Carlos because people are going to get a letter. You can't get to a human being. And I think that in many ways, one, we will be in higher demand. We've already seen that demand going up. But I think that you're going to have to be trained. The old days, if you read my book on building $1 million practice, where I just went in and fudged it and, they kind of trained me what to do. You got to go do this, Mr. Green, go do this. Those days are gone. You're not going to be able to get a human being, let alone have them tell you what to do. So I think the pressure in many ways will be on the tax pro to understand what they're doing. I think the need for trained representation is actually going to go up, not down. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this week's Tax Rep Network podcast. I'm Eric Green. I am joined today by my buddy Carlos Samaniego. If you don't know Carlos, he's easy to find. All right, you can Google him and he'll come right up. All right, it's taxdebtconsultant.com. Carlos is an enrolled agent, an NTPI fellow. He's a certified tax resolution consultant with Tax Rep Network. He's the author of several books, including Make the IRS an Offer It Can't Refuse, which I love that one. Just love the title, The IRS Survival Guide and Never Give Up, and others. I just grabbed a couple of them. But he is also very, knee deep in this. And the big thing on everyone's mind after the headline, beyond the fact that apparently we're going to take over Gaza and turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East, is Donald Trump going to actually gut the IRS? And so, of course, I'm sure, Carlos, like we're getting bombarded. I've got people in the government. What's funny is I've got revenue agents and officers calling me, asking me what I think is going to happen. Yeah, you work for the IRS. No, I hate to break it to you. President Trump didn't call me and said, you know what, Eric, this is what I'm thinking about. And honestly,
you know what's crazy, Eric, and that's kind of the reason I kind of reached out to you, is just because kind of like you're getting these calls, I'm getting the exact same calls, because literally tax rep professionals are calling me. What's going to happen to our business? Are we not going to be in business anymore? And then the opposite side of that, I'm actually getting clients saying, there's no need for us to move forward because the new administration is going to wipe out the IRS and they're not going to collect. So
have you been getting? But we were just talking about this. So how many final notices came in yesterday?
I had Liz said 32 letter 11s came in yesterday.
Yeah. So look. Here's what I think is going to happen. So they've offered the buyout, right? Mm-hmm. I've already heard from 2 appeals officers. They're taking the buyout. Anyone who can leave the government, who is close to retirement anyway, this is their ticket out the door. Here's what I think is going to happen, in all honesty. And I kind of equate it to what happened with COVID. And if you're wondering, I'm not talking about people getting sick and dying. What I'm talking about is it accelerated what was already happening. So whereas businesses would not have been into this remote work thing, they would do 1 day a week, maybe if you were a good performer. COVID just forced nothing changed. It just accelerated everything, right, in my mind. What is happening here, to me, Danny Werfel, who was the commissioner who just stepped down, had a 5-year plan to automate, do much more online, make things easier for taxpayers to go into the government system and deal with their issue. Look who's leading this. It's Elon Musk, who's all about automation. So I think what this is going to do is you're going to see those resources, they are going to stop the hiring, right? There's already a hiring freeze at the IRS. They've already stopped all their hiring. They're going to shed everyone they can shed voluntarily. They can't go away. They still have to enforce. They still have to collect. Right. But that shift we've seen over the last 10 years of more correspondence audits done through the mail or online, the automated enforcement they've turned on, the letter 11s that are coming in waves, we're getting them too. That's going to become the norm. And so what I think is interesting is, what will it do if you are so you know what? As a big picture, not to get on a soapbox, let's talk about the tax industry before we get into just the rep stuff.
Right.
You have automated bookkeeping. Now, take your pick. Intuit, Xero, BotKeeper, take your pick. Bookkeeping can be automated.
Right.
A human being should review it, but the bulk of the labor is done. Tax return prep, Lisio and Gruntworks have automated the 1040 prep. what and everyone got very bent out of shape. Remember the Super Bowl last year when Intuit, break up with your tax preparer,
Bingo.
and
Right.
industry went into meltdown over it. And I think it was the NATP, one of them contacted me and wanted a quote from me.
Uh-huh.
I said, look, it's probably in bad taste. It's probably a bit crass, but it's honest. I told him, I think if you're someone who just preps returns, you're a dodo bird. You're going to become like the pharmacist. If you're a
Right.
pharmacist in America, you work for Walgreens or CVS. Used to be Dwayne Reed, but they bought Dwayne Reed. And so what I think you're going to see in the tax prep world, I don't know what's going on in California, Carlos, but out here, the big regional firms, Citron Cooperman's, Markham, CBiz, they're buying up all of the decent small firms. The accounting firm that does our work just got bought by Citron Cooperman. Because if you've got all these automated systems and you have everything in place, all you want is the clients,
Right.
right? I just want your clients. So in the tax prep world, we're going to see it. I think you're going to see it split, and you'll have a few islands in the middle. The decent firms are going to get bought by bigger firms and consolidated. The solo folks who bang out 1040s will go to work for Intuit because they'll be the person on the video who will answer your questions.
Right.
It's like the pharmacists. They're going to go to work for Intuit, H&R Block, Liberty Tax, one of those. The folks in the middle that have added, that are advisors, that are doing forensic work, rep work, that stuff, that automation is not there, and it's a long way off because of the intellect and the strategy. Eventually, I think it'll get there, but because we've been talking about it, about developing something, and everyone we're hearing from is it will do the rote stuff really well. It is AI is not where you think it is in terms of the matrix, like in other words, being able to solve things. And so it's really going to put pressure. And in the rep world, I think that we're not going away. What's going to happen is it's going to become automated. They're going to need Carlos because people are going to get a letter. You can't get to a human being. And I think that in many ways, one, we will be in higher demand, as we've already seen that demand, going up. But I think that you're going to have to be trained. The old days, if you read my book, Building $1 Million Practice, where I just went in and fudged it, and they kind of trained me what to do. You got to go do this, Mr. Green, go do this. Those days are gone. You're not going to be able to get a human being, let alone have them tell you what to do. So I think the pressure in many ways will be on the tax pro to understand what they're doing. I think the need for trained representation is actually going to go up, not down.
And you brought up a good point because just yesterday I had a conversation with somebody in your neck of the woods, New Hampshire, actually, and they said that they needed to hire somebody because they were trying to do it themselves, and they could never get through to anybody. And even when they did get through to somebody, it seems like they always gave them totally different
Right.
options, and they said it was a confusing nightmare to be able to deal with. So now they're super excited that now they have somebody that can actually pick up that phone, contact somebody, and knows what they're doing. And I told him, Eric, and you, I know you guys have seen this. Sometimes you're telling the people on the telephone, and including newer revenue agents, what to do. They're
Right.
like, "Oh, I didn't know you can do that." Well, yes, you can. So what you're saying just makes perfect sense. I do have a question though, Eric. Elon Musk, you probably saw this news article, deleted the whole IRS direct file, a portion of it online. What's that all about? Have you seen that news article?
Yeah, I saw it, and I'm because I don't do returns myself. I'm not as up on that. I have to tell you, so the Democrats loved the free file. Now, if you're asking me personally,
Right.
from a tax system, if you have a W-2 and that's it, why should you have to go pay someone to prep your return? Why can't I log online, confirm standard deduction, hit submit?
Absolutely.
To me, it feels like the lobbyists are winning. The Republicans, again, they view it as it's anti-competition, which I get, right? Anytime the government gets into providing something, now you're skewing the market. So now you're competing with H&R Block and Liberty Tax and Intuit and the rest.
Makes
So
sense.
I understand the theory why Elon Musk and the Republicans would be like, we are not in the business of doing returns. We should be out of it. But on the flip side, I understand from the Democratic political point of view, why should we compel you to go file a form when we can just do this in a couple minutes and automate it? And by the way, it's another thing that's just done, right?
Right.
Why should we have something submitted and the e-filing that bounces that goes wrong because there's a typo or whatever?
Right.
So I see both sides of it. Given that the Republicans are in power, I suspect that free file will go away for a while, at least.
And it makes much more sense now what you're saying, right? Because if you get rid of the whole free file, now they're going to have to go to a H&R Block or whatever it might be, because the average person has no clue what the hell they're doing anyway.
Right, right.
So it makes sense.
When they try to do it themselves, that's how they end up as our clients. Yeah.
I always tell people, oh, I love it when you guys use that direct file, try to do it yourself, because you just become a client down the road.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
I have a client who I'm actually friends with now. I met him because he got TurboTax. He had three different partnerships that he was in. He should never been trying to do his own return. And it kept asking him in the interview for each business, do you have miles for business? So we kept putting in the same miles. So 25,000 miles. He had 75,000 miles. You wonder why he got audited? And, and it was just going through the interview. And I remember because of the agent kept threatening criminal. Well, this was clearly intentional. And so we actually sat down with the client with the software. And the agent said to me, well, that's dumb. Why does he keep asking the same question?
Oh, wow. Wow.
I'm like, look, I mean, but this is what it is. And in the end, he even took the penalty off.
Oh, wow.
He wiped out the accuracy penalty for him. He said, because we blamed it all on the software. But
Gotcha.
no, I think it's going to be so what do I actually think is going to happen? I don't know that the IRS is going to get gutted. What I think you're going to see, they're going to, anyone who will go voluntarily go. I think you will see that money. So first of all, the increases over the next like 6 years that were supposed to happen. Remember, it was 80 billion. They clawed back 19, so it was 61 billion. And then we've had a few years of that. Whatever's left on that I think you're going to see go away. They're going to take that funding back. With the freed up funding from the people that leave, you're going to see, and I'm just basing this on the fact that Elon Musk is driving this. They're going to automate. They're going to whatever Werfel had laid out. He's going to probably hand it to people inside and said, "You got 18 months. We're not doing
Oh,
this over 60."
gotcha.
Right?
Well, I've got a question. You brought up something. You said a whole bunch of appeals officers are taking that retirement package. And we've known for a long time, you've actually talked about it in the past, that a lot of people in the IRS are in their 50s and 60s, and they were already looking towards retirement. And it's one of the reasons the IRS was trying to get that extra fund, getting that funding to hire kind of the replacements, right? But now that we're losing these appeals officers, one of the things I noticed just about a month and a half ago, or was it about 2 months ago, when a bunch of letter 11s came out, we filed the CDP appeal, and then normally back during COVID time, it would take 6, 7, 8, 9 months to get an appeals officer.
Right.
But when we filed this last batch a few months ago, we literally got an appeals officer within 30 days, pretty quickly.
Right.
Now that you're saying that a lot of these guys are taking that early retirement, and we just got a batch of letter 11s, which we're going to be filing that CDP appeal.
Right.
I don't think, based on what you're saying, that we're going to get that appeals officers as fast anymore.
Well, so and I can pitch in my 2 cents here. So here's what I am urging the folks that I know, the executives. And here's what I think. I do not know the new commissioner, assuming he gets appointed. And frankly, I've talked to a bunch of people. Nobody knows him.
Is that the what was this? I wrote it
He
down.
was the former state rep from Missouri, and he was very involved in the ERC stuff. Here's what I think you're going to find. One, if you're the
Billy
governor,
Long.
yep,
Billy Long. Okay,
Billy
that's
Long.
it.
I think what you're going to find, and I suspect he'll get approved. I've not heard any. I mean, there have been people whining, but I haven't heard any of the good reason why I have reason to believe the Republicans are not going to appoint him.
Okay.
So I think what you're going to see, those ERC credit, voluntary disclosure resolution off plan they came out
Yeah.
with. You're going to see another one. Come in, resolve your debt. They're going to try to do everything voluntary that they can, right, to clear the deck. You're going to see a lot less litigation. The government's just not going to have the means to litigate, so they're going to pick and choose very carefully. I am urging. So years ago, Nina Olson, and when she was taxpayer advocate, they did a study, and what the study showed is the average offer that the government received was 16 cents on the dollar. Oh, and then she went back and looked. All of the ones that they rejected, how much did they ultimately collect? 7 cents,
Oh wow.
which means even the bad offers were better than what they ultimately collected. I would expect if I'm Billy Long, I have a massive inventory. We need to collect, we need to enforce. I don't have the bodies to just, hash out every single um, item. I think you're going to see, I don't know if they'll change the standards, but what I think you will see, if I were him, I would talk to the offer people. You got to resolve them. We're not concerned about the nickels and dimes. Get it done. And same with CDP. If you're proposing a payment plan, do they have to fight about every allowable expense? In fact, a number of years ago, we went down to one settlement officer in Connecticut because of retirements, whatever. She literally called me and said, "Look, you're offering like $1,400 a month. I'm coming up with 18. Would your guy do 1,500?" I said, "Yeah." She's like, "Done." And she just started, in other words, just resolve them, right? Just
Right.
whatever. And I think that you'll see more programs out there to try to resolve.
Okay.
They may overhaul the offer program. I mean, he could come out and say, "Hey, if you're willing to just pay the tax," even though they've never done that before. The IRS works on a reasonable collection potential formula. And I always have clients, if I could just pay the tax, can you make the penalty and interest? But the government doesn't do that.
Right.
They could. Our state has done that. I've called up before and they were like, "Can you pay the tax?" Yeah, good, done. Really? And the state of Connecticut will do that stuff. So I think I'm just guessing we're going to see them lighten up on what it is they want to just close cases. And because I've been urging them now for a number of years, the $250,000, no, it's called a non-streamlined, but it's the streamlined agreement over the CSED, but
Right.
not if you're with the field, because they perceive the people with the revenue officers to be their worst offenders. I've been arguing a lot of those people keep defaulting because you're so restrictive on their plan that
Right.
they have no wiggle room. Extend it, and I've been saying, even if they go 3 years in default, it's 3 years of payments we got that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Bingo.
Just collect what you can collect. I think that argument may end up, even though they all said, "Well, it makes sense, we don't know." I wouldn't be surprised if they start warming up to those ideas of anything we can do to move the inventory, let's move it. And
And that
uh,
sounds like a hell of a plan too.
well, if they went through and did the math and they sent a letter to taxpayers and say, "Look, you owe this money. We could
Right.
levy you. We're proposing a payment plan of X. If you agree, scan this, go online, approve it, put in your checking information. We'll take the first payment in 60 days." I bet a 15 point something million that owe balances. I bet you could get 500,000 to a million to just take the
Bingo.
deal.
It's almost similar to what I've seen when people come in with their student loan debts. A lot of times they'll just get a notice, "Hey, start making this payment, and we'll consider you, complying in your student loans." Probably very similar to something like that. So,
A number of years ago, I don't remember the name of it. It was something limited audit. NALA, I don't remember that it was a term for it. What they literally did, they tried this as a test basis. I got two of these.
uh-huh.
You got an audit letter that said, "We've reviewed this. If you agree to get us everything within 10 or within 14 days, we're only going to look at these two issues. Get us the backup on those two. We promise the audit stays there." It was like limited scope, something audit. And when I got them, I remember calling one of the auditors. She said, it's a test program, but can we focus on the big items and just move the audit pile?" Because
Uh,
what they probably found, and I'm guessing, if you study the time, if it takes a year to do an audit, after the few first big items, how much are you really collecting on all the other little nitty,
Right, right.
gritty things you're picking on? And so I'm wondering if you're not going to see a warming up to that. That let's focus on the big items, almost like in public auditing. Carlos, I don't think you ever worked at a public accounting firm.
I have not.
What you did is it was like looking at error rate and all of that. If you have 5,000 receivables, but sometimes like 30-40% of it is like two items, three items.
Oh,
You
gotcha.
hit the big items and all right, we've already done testing. We tested 40%. If we're good, we're going to assume we're good. And nowadays with AI, they can audit everything. But way back in the 80s and 90s, when I was doing this, they would because like imagine auditing JP Morgan with $25 million transactions a day.
Right, right, right.
Now, again, with AI, which has now loaded on the system, they can test every single one of them, but they couldn't back then. You took a percentage of the biggest items, you tested them, and you hoped for the best. So
Gotcha.
I'm wondering if you're going to, again, I think one of the things I think they can do easily is we're going to do what we're going to do. We're going to limit the scope. We're going to shift it to these items, and we're going to move on. They could go to the non-filers and say, if you file your returns, we need the last 6 years, whatever returns are missing, we'll waive penalty, and we'll cut interest. This is a one-time opportunity. Come in and voluntarily file so we don't have to go after you. There are
Gotcha.
things that they could do that states have done. The IRS generally does not do. But those are all, I think, all things they could do in an attempt to move the inventory with the minimum number of people possible. But I do think in the end, it's going to be automation, automation, automation.
You brought up a couple of things want you to kind of dig deep into it. Is you were talking about Connecticut, state of Connecticut, and we were talking about states. And
Yep.
we know California and Connecticut are probably just twin brothers, right, when it comes down to collection.
Yep.
I'm personally, and I've told other resolution people, and I've been saying this for years because you're one of the people that taught me this. Go after the state cases because they're going to move much faster anyway.
Yep.
So, and if they got a state case, guess what they're going to have? They're going to have more than likely an IRS issue.
Right.
What do you think happens with the states, considering now with all the new administrations wanting to cut funding to everybody? I think the states are even more so going to go after their past due tax debt that people have.
And given, I agree. And given how many, and if you go back and look, whenever we've gone into like slumps, economic slumps, what you'll see a lot of are amnesty deals. And I think you're going to see a ton of amnesty. Come in, settle that back tax debt. We're willing to take 50 cents on the dollar, right? Just get rid of it.
Right.
Let's collect what we can collect. Our state of Connecticut he's gone now, but he was an assistant commissioner probably 10 years ago. I asked him, I'm like, of these debts, because the state of Connecticut shows this receivable because they assume 100% is collectible on every single debt. I said, how much of that stuff after 3 years is collectible? He said, almost nothing.
Really?
And I'm like, why don't you just send him an offer? Pay in 25 cents. First of all, just get rid of it. You don't have to keep sending him paper, bills. Just get rid of it. And I think that at the state side, probably you're going to see a lot of similar. If I were the state of Connecticut, I would adopt those limited scopes because those audits seem to drag on forever and they don't seem to ever really find a ton. And then they come up with baloney, where we had one here. They came into the client and you're not reporting and paying admissions tax, which is like if you have like an amusement park or whatever, and it's a business that has this in it. And so you're not charging, and they went all the way back to the beginning because they never filed their paid $2 million bill, except that they don't charge. It's free. There is no admissions tax because you're not charging. And so we submit for an informal conference with the head of audit, and we sent them photos. It's free. There's no admissions tax due. He gets on the phone call with me. This is during COVID. He said, and here's what. I don't think the auditor ever went to the location because of COVID. Now, I can't prove it because they were open, but I strongly suspect, given the report, he wasn't physically there because everything he said was wrong.
Right.
And the audit manager said, Eric, I've reviewed this and I'm good with it. I'm good with the audit report. However, COVID, whatever, I have a lot of leeway to settle this. And I'm like, all right. He said to make me an offer. I'm like, I'll talk to the client, but I can tell you right now, my what I'm going to tell the client is we're going to spend 25 grand fighting this. I would just pay the 25 to make it go away. So if in terms of an offer, I just want to give you a heads up. It's going to be a lot closer to the 25 than it is your 2 million. He said, yeah, I understand that. That's what we
Wow.
did. I spoke to the client and she said, well, are they going to come back in 3 years? The state actually did away with the admissions tax that year. So at the end of that year, the admission tax went away. We don't have it anymore.
Okay.
Um, and so the client said, yeah, offer the 25. They took it.
Gotcha.
It was a shakedown.
Gotcha.
Um, will the state focus on just big things, and tell the auditors, you can't be out there for 6 months. I want you in and out in 30 days. Let's pick the big things. And honestly, if the client will sign and pay, we'll cut this, we'll make deals, and let's just collect money and move. Because
Gotcha.
again, if this stuff gets dragged out, it goes to appeals. Now we're in collection. I'm cutting deals. How much are you really getting? Honestly, I'd argue there's no benefit. Once you get past the first like tranche of information, I think that what you'd see is the return on that drops pretty quickly.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I want to take you in a different direction here. We've been talking about how this is really going to affect tax resolution professionals, right? And I mentioned to you at the very beginning of this that I'm actually getting people saying that we don't need to worry about it anymore because the IRS is going to be wiped out, whether it's by Trump or Elon Musk.
Mhm.
What do you say to the people that are watching this that have a large balance due, have unfiled tax returns? Should they be still concerned with what's getting ready to happen?
I see. I would be, and so if you're a taxpayer with an issue,
Yeah.
here's what happens if you do nothing. Because of the automated enforcement, it's going to happen anyway. So let's say you meet with Carlos, and you know what? I'm gonna wait. They're not bugging me right now, and it last sounds like they're all going to go away because apparently the government will fund itself from like what are we, meth dealers? I don't know what we're going to become, but we're going to somehow fund ourselves, and I'm not going to do anything. The other side of what Elon and President Trump are talking about. So now you get levied. Do you know how hard it's going to be to get to a human being to get that released? In fact, I would almost suggest to you whatever they got in that levy is probably gone because the chance of me getting to someone in 21 days with a financial, getting it released
Right.
is going to drop precipitously. Right now, it's really good. Right? We can call, I can get to taxpayer advocate, I can get to an appeals officer without too much trouble. That is going to change drastically. So if I'm a taxpayer, I might want to see where I am. If I haven't gotten the final notice, I might wait a little bit, see if they're going to come out with an amnesty kind of deal or something like that. But I actually think that I would be more aggressively trying to settle it because in the world of automated enforcement, I do not want to get caught up in the machinery,
Mm,
right? Because
mm,
even though we know people,
right.
even if I call, I mean, I've actually made calls to the SBSE commissioner, not Leah, the one prior, and had her tell me, I don't have anyone on staff. This is before they started all the hiring. I don't have
Right.
anyone on staff who can even deal with it. I mean,
Wow.
they're that short staffed. And so, in fact, to give you some insight, that person was telling me, because I'm still friends with her, she's been involved in some of the new hiring. They weren't even doing background checks. They had people that had been fired from other jobs for theft. I mean, it ultimately came out and they had to get rid of people. But the old days where they would vet people very carefully,
Right.
they've just been because they can't get anyone. So again, I really think in many ways this is going to just accelerate what would have happened. So what would have happened over 10 or 15 years, I think is now going to happen over 5.
Right.
But so what we're getting is a lot of people who call us and like, what should I do? And I'm telling them, look, they will probably, when they talk about gutting it, they're going to get anyone who can do a voluntary, in fact, so I'll tell you, we had a call yesterday with a client. One of those appeals officers who's taken the deal. He said, I'm
Right.
putting my paperwork in Thursday on the deadline, and I'm going to take the deal. He wants us to close this week. And I called the client. The client said, well, I think we got to negotiate whatever. And by the way, he actually came back and said, here's where I am with my number. I'm willing to round down. And so he was like at like 392, whatever. So we threw out 380. Now
Right.
the bill is 800,000.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
All right, we got it down. It's a notice to liability. The client didn't have great records. He didn't have basis for something. I mean, he owes money.
Right.
We've done as good as we can. The client actually said to me, well, given everything going on, should we do nothing? I said, here's what's going to happen.
Mm,
We don't take this deal.
right.
He's going to reject it when he walks out the door. He's not going to leave it for somebody else. We've
Right.
rejected it. It's rejected. You cannot file another one without new information. We have no other new information. So you are precluded from this. Your next step to challenge would be to full pay and file for a refund and start litigation because you've already been to appeals. They're not going to hear it again. So you're now looking at paying 800,000 with penalty and interest plus by the time we get around to it. And I said, I would take this deal today, now. And the client actually texted me. He said, that makes perfect sense. Do it.
Nice.
Good.
Nice.
And so there are some folks that, for instance, if people call you and they didn't get a final notice, say, look, they might come out with some tweak to the system. They're going to keep enforcing. But, look, if you're not under threat of final notice, so they can't levy you, if you want to wait until a notice shows up, okay, it's up to you. You're an adult. It's your issue.
Right.
But if you are under final notice, that the levy will happen probably automatically. I won't be able to stop it. And then once it happens, we're going to have a hell of a time trying to get it released because the same reason that you think that it might go away is going to be the same reason I can't get to a human being to help you.
Gotcha.
So I would think I would not do that. If you're under final notice, and listen, if you're thinking, look, I was going to file an offer, I think they might change the plan. Good. Get into a de minimis installment agreement and let's wait and see what happens. But at least avoid the enforcement aspect.
And I think that's why it's important. Yeah, it's a service we both provide that we do the account monitoring by filing that power of attorney. It's just so if you haven't got that letter 11, that we can at least monitor what's happening in real time to be able to react if something were to happen.
Right.
It's funny because I sent an email. I think I sent you a copy of the email that, people are literally believe that the IRS is just going to be wiped out. And I said in my email that the IRS has outlived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, 31 presidents, every reform promise since 1862. The IRS is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, listen, to me, if in fact they truly had that idea, that would be like us getting rid of our accounts receivable department. It makes no sense to me whatsoever because, and by the way, Donald Trump has said they got to deal with the deficit. He wants to extend the TCJA provisions and possibly get more aggressive at cutting for businesses, right? To try to, promote for the economy. Where's this money coming from? Now, I know that people are like, well, tariffs. What happens generally with tariffs is prices are going to go up because people are going to be buying less. So we're not going to be collecting as much on tariffs because it makes it undesirable for people to buy it. It gets very expensive. So our income could go, income into the country could go up because of tariffs, but not enough. I've also heard this, the sales tax. Have you heard this? They're just going to do a sales tax and get rid of the income tax.
No,
This comes up. Remember, it came up with what's his name who had the 777.
that's right. Okay.
Kane was his name, right? He had the chicken restaurants, I think. The problem with a sales tax, if you're a taxpayer listening to this, or even if you're a tax pro, go pull most of your clients, take their total liability for the year and divide it by their income. I'm betting they're paying somewhere between 9 and 13% when you add it all up.
Right.
In order to cover the current budget, the sales tax number, I think, has to be somewhere around 24 to 26%. So most Americans would see their tax bill go through the roof. Now, you're not going to see the bill because it's on what you spend, but the cost of everything is going to accelerate. And the reason it's referred to as regressive, Everyone who lives on their like 100% of their income, they're going to pay the tax. The wealthy who live on a fraction of their income, they're going to see their taxes drop.
Mhm.
So, though it would be good for Mr. Trump himself, I think this would be really bad for America.
Wow. It's funny. I wake and you probably do the same thing. You wake up every morning, the last this last month with what the hell's going to happen next. And I think this was a perfect, at least for people on both sides of the aisle here, right? In regards to our tax professionals that we train at Tax Rep Network, that our business is not going anywhere anytime soon. And for the taxpayers that are listening to this that want to know what do they got to deal with in regards to their tax debt or their unfiled returns. And it sounds like overall, Eric, you're just saying you got to deal with it. It's not going away anytime soon.
Right.
In
No.
fact, it's going to get hard. It's going to get much harder.
Yeah. And just for people listening, I'll be honest with you, and I'm an independent voter. So that means I hate both Democrats and Republicans equally. I'm not suggesting that this is necessarily a bad thing to accelerate and invest in the automation and the online structure, and for taxpayers to be able to log in and deal with it has been everything we've been talking about for years.
Right.
So I think in many ways there's a good thing to this. It's going to be the pain of going through it because what's going to happen, the automation's not there yet. Now the bodies aren't going to be there. We're going to have this period, whether it's a year or 5 years, where we're going to go back to you can't get somebody. People are not going to get their problems resolved. People are going to end up getting levied and paying taxes they probably don't owe, but they're hamstrung. And as much as I like the business, I think it's offensive that you have to hire tax lawyers and high-end tax pros to get anything done with the government. In a way, it's almost a form of corruption in a way. I'm not suggesting that Mr. Trump's corrupt. I think what he's saying is, here's my idea, go do it. And he has people that are bulldozers, right?
Mhm.
Elon Musk, look what he did at Twitter.
Right.
What is it? Full sail ahead, be damned the mines. There's going to be a growing pains going through this, and unfortunately, I think taxpayers are going to bear the brunt of it. But my advice, I agree with everything you're saying. I think if you have a problem, I would deal with it now. I would try to get ahead of it. And the rationale would be one, just also get it off your plate. Just I have to tell you and I know you see this, we talk about this. People that walk out of here after we've resolved it and that weight has come off is huge. I mean, it's not just the fact that you owe, it's the mental and because of that, the physical toll it takes on you
Right.
carrying this around with you. So one is just for that, I would deal with it.
Right.
But two, if you don't deal with it, what I'm very concerned about is if you get caught up in the machinery, the automated levy, try to get to someone to fix that, who's even willing to fix that, is going to become a lot harder. And so it's a real gamble. It
Yeah.
is a real gamble that you're taking because the downside might be that much worse.
Right. Right. Well, I want to personally thank you just for, taking the time out of your schedule to do this. I know when I brought it up to you, I'm just like, okay, we got to get out there and tell and let people know what the heck's going on because a lot of us are just confused what's going on. And so thank you. And I know you said you had a case that you had to deal with at night at the bottom of the hour. So
Yeah, no. And for those folks who are tax professionals listening to this, I mean, and here's what Carlos, here's what I'm getting a lot of because of tax rep.
right.
I'm getting a lot of emails. Eric, I just have this one case, whatever. So if you need a case consult or you want to talk to someone on the tax rep team, I'll put in the description. You can click on that, see how we can help you, whether it's an actual case you just want help with, or direction, or you want to actually get involved in getting trained and adding this to your practice, whatever it is. But we're going to see interesting times, I think, without a doubt. Patrick, for everyone out, Patrick, Wanzer is one of our trainers, literally emailed me and Kevin this morning. He's like, I've never had so much resolution work ever.
Yeah.
We're getting bombarded with folks who I think are listening to me and are saying, like, I want to hurry up and get on this. I have had two that have questioned, like, should we do this now? And one I told you about is they're already in the middle of this doubt as to liability offer. No, 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 take the deal. The other one, we're going to pull transcripts, and if they're not under final notice, look, if they want to wait, but just understand that I don't think access to the government is going to get easier for a long time.
Right.
It's going to get worse, and so I would really take that into consideration. But no, listen, everyone, and Carlos, thanks for doing this. I think it's
Oh, no.
it's a really interesting topic. We are going to live to see interesting times.
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be fun. You know what? And I know you do too. We truly enjoy when we help somebody, how good that feels because we literally we save lives. I truly believe we truly save people's lives doing what we do. And
Oh yeah, no, I mean just carrying around the weight of that.
yeah,
Um, and well, and I will, it's funny. I actually heard from a client. They're actually in the book. It was the steel company. They had all this debt, whatever. And it took a while. We worked all that through. Well, without the debt, they actually got funding. They grew. They just sold for 12 million. Their steel company did
wow.
great. And she said, "Do you know we would never been able to do this without the capital? We would never gotten the capital if you hadn't finally gotten helped us get that debt resolved." They went to an attorney who didn't do much. They went to an accountant who tried to help them but didn't really understand what he was doing. So I agree with you in some respects between the mental anguish, the physical fallout from that, but also the impact on people's lives, businesses, and income. Saving lives might be a little bit. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but the truth is, we do have a major impact on people's lives.
Well, I'm coming from a former EMT paramedic, and a lot of times we've gone to emergencies, and you realize that heart attacks are caused by stress. And as you already know, I went 8 years dealing with this type of tax debt, and
It's how you got into this,
how I
actually.
got into this. And yeah, we do a lot. And if you are watching this also and you want to, as Eric said, you want to get involved in the tax resolution people business to be able to help other people like we're talking about, you know, look at the description below. Tax Rep Network. Eric has been an amazing mentor and trainer to not only me, but thousands of people across the country. And we are here ready to help you. And Eric, I just want to personally thank you on this podcast for the work that you continue to do in this industry. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for all the help you brought to us. I mean, Carlos is one of my marketing geniuses. So, everyone, listen, I'll put a link in the description below. If you want to reach out to us, please do. I hope we've given you at least our input on what we think is going to happen, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's going to be interesting. So I think we'll be doing an update maybe in a few months. So we'll see. Well, Carlos, thank you for doing this. Everyone, thanks for joining us this week and see you next week on the podcast.
bye bye.